Hello and welcome back to another Magic the Gathering Arena Brawl deck tech. This time around we have Yasharn Implacable Earth, a 4/4 for 4 Selesnya legendary creature elemental boar. And when he enters the battlefield, you search for a library or your library for a basic forest and a basic plains card. Reveal those cards, put them into your hand, then shuffle your library. And its secondary effect is players can't pay life or sacrifice non-land permanents to cast spells or activate abilities. So it does shut down a lot of big player decks in the format, along with just being in general pretty good commander. You don't miss land drops after. And for this Yasharn deck specifically, I've decided to go with something a little different, 1/1 counter themed. So we're going to start with some ramp and then go into the 1/1 counter creatures and then just some interesting other creatures in the deck. So we have for ramp, we have Solemn Simulacrum. It's the 4 mana 2/2. When it dies or when it enters the battlefield, search for a basic land, put it on the battlefield, tapped, shuffle your library, and then when it dies, you get to draw a card. Fertilid kind of fits in with the other category that we're going to happen next, which is creatures that enter with 1/1 counters themselves. It enters with 2 1/1 counters, and you can pay 2 mana to remove a 1/1 counter from it. And target player searches their library for a basic land. The target's always going to be you. Shuffles the library and puts it onto the battlefield tapped. Then we have Tangled Florahedron. It is a land early game or a ramp spell early game depending on what you need. Illusion Caryatid. It is a 2 mana 1/1 that taps to add 1 mana of any color. And if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, add 2 mana of any one color. So with your commander, it makes it so that it taps for 2. Gilded Goose. It is a 1 mana 0/2 flyer, the only 1 mana ramp spell in the format. Enters the battlefield, create a food token, pay 2, create a food token, or you can sacrifice a food token to create 1 mana of any color. Next we have creatures like Fertilid that enter the battlefield with 1/1 counters. Something I wanted to try is this Swarm Shambler. 1 mana 1/1. Whenever a creature with a 1/1 counter on it becomes a target of a spell an opponent controls, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. So it gives you something to make sure that your creatures are somewhat replaced when they die. This was a card I love. The art I think is absolutely hilarious, and is a 1/1 for landfall. And when a land enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on it, and it gains flying until the end of turn. Scavenging Ooze, your typical graveyard or most commonly used graveyard hate creature. It is a 2 mana 2/2, and you can pay a green to exile a card from a graveyard, and if it's a creature card, put a 1/1 counter on Scavenging Ooze and you gain 1 life. Yorvil, Lord of Garenbrig. It's 3 green mana, so sometimes it's hard to cast, but the mana base supports it. Even if you don't get it down on 3, it's still very strong. It enters with 4 1/1 counters, and whenever a green creature enters the battlefield under your control, you put another 1/1 counter on him. And if that creature's power is greater than Yorvil's power, put another 1/1 counter. So with the way the deck plays out, he can get very big very fast. Wildwood Scourge. Wildwood Scourge enters the battlefield with X 1/1 counters on it. Whenever 1 or more 1/1 counters are put on another non-Hydra creature you control, put a 1/1 counter on Wild Scourge. So it gets big very fast with the other cards in the deck. Then we have some cards that kind of play off of the 1/1 counters with the Gnarled Colony. It itself can enter with 1/1 counters if you kick it for the green and 2 colorless. It will enter with 2 1/1 counters on it, but the main thing is that creatures you control with a 1/1 counter have trample. Conclave Mentor. If 1 or more 1/1 counters will be put on a creature you control, that many plus 1 counters are put on that creature instead, and then when it dies, you gain life equal to its power. So it is an early game play that allows you to stay alive and also makes things bigger. I've always wanted to play with the iridescent horn beetle, but never really had an opportunity. Why not? This is the perfect kind of deck for it. So at the beginning of your end step, create a 1/1 insect creature token. For each 1/1 counter you've put on creatures under your control this turn. So it's a little pricey for what it is. It's a 5 mana 3/4. But late game, long game, it might be able to do something. We'll see. Then the next pile helps put 1/1 counters on creatures. So we have the Luminarch Aspirant. So it's a 2 mana 1/1, and at the beginning of your combat on your turn, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. Tempered Veteran. You can pay 1 white and tap it to put a 1/1 counter on target creature with a 1/1 counter on it, so you can make things bigger. Or you can pay 6 to put a 1/1 counter on a creature and start the ball rolling. Oran Reef Ooze. So when it enters, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control so you can put it on itself. Whenever it attacks, put a 1/1 counter on each attacking creature with a 1/1 counter on it. So you can see there's lots of play here. Pride Milliken is a 3 mana 2/1 kitty cat. When it enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on target creature. You can see 1/1 counter. Each creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it has trample. Basari's Lieutenant. Great card for this deck specifically. Protection from multicolor can be very effective. And when it enters, here again, you put another 1/1 counter on something. And then if a creature with a 1/1 counter on it dies, you get a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance. So it's helping maintain your board from wraths and destruction. And last of the 1/1 counter creatures, we have Renata Called to the Hunt. Power and toughness, or power, is equal to your devotion to green. And whenever another creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional 1/1 counter on it, so a creature enters, it gets a 1/1 counter automatically. Then we have a few creatures that are not specifically 1/1 counter related, but are just really strong. Shoot Swarm, everyone's favorite insect, is a 1/1 with landfall that you get a green creature token if you have 5 or fewer lands. If you have 6 or more lands, you get a copy of it. It gets out of hand really fast, really quickly. Crystalline Giant, Wall of Text, is a 3 mana 3/3, and it gets a random counter of flying, first strike, death touch, hexproof, lifelink, menace, reach, trample, vigilance, and a 1/1 counter. Whew. Put that on at the beginning of your combat at random. We have the Luminous Broodmoth, or Mothra. It's a 3/4 flyer for 4. And when a creature you control without flying dies, which is the majority of the deck, you can return it to the battlefield under its control with a flying counter on it. So basically gives your creatures the ability to come back. Ancient Greed Warden. You may play lands from your graveyard. So we have a couple of fetch lands and 1 land destruction card. And if a land entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of an opponent of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So it plays well with Shoot Swarm, and it plays well with one of our enchantments in our main deck. Realm Cloak Giant. It's a Wrath, 5 mana sorcery for the adventure of Cast Off, destroy all non-giant creatures, and it is a 7 mana 7/7 with vigilance. Now, on to the non-creature spells. We have some ramp, we have some destruction, we have some 1/1 counter, and then we have some just general stuff. The 2 ramp spells in the deck are the Arcane Cygnet, 2 mana, add 1 color of your commander's color identity. Great Henge plays a role of card draw, 1/1 counters, gaining life. It's a 9 mana, but it costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. So very quickly you can be able to cast it for 4/3 fairly easily. You add 2 green and gain 2 life. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on it and draw a card. So it does a bunch of different things. Then we have a bunch of removal. Glass Casket, exile target creature with a converted mana cost 3 or less. When this thing leaves the battlefield, they get it back. Inscription of Abundance. You can pay 5 mana to get all 3 of these abilities, or you can pay 2 to choose one of them. 1/1 counters, 2 of those, which goes really well with the deck. Gaining life equal to highest toughness or highest power of the creature you control might save you in a game against aggro, or target creature you control fights another target creature you don't control. Instant speed fight. Fun. More instant speed fight. Ram through. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. And if it has trample, anything else goes over. So it's another instant speed fight removal spell. Return to nature, destroy target artifact, destroy target enchantment, or possibly exile a card. I thought that was better than Wilt. Sure, Wilt will draw you a card by cycling it, but this gives you the opportunity to exile a pesky thing out of a graveyard. Banishing Light, 3 mana, enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent, so this deals with anything until it leaves the battlefield. Elspeth, who conquers death, 5 mana. First one, exile target permanent greater than 3 mana cost. Non-creature spells your opponents cost 2 more to cast is the second until your next turn. And the third is return a creature or a planeswalker to the battlefield. You either put a 1/1 counter on it if it's a creature, or you put a loyalty counter if it's a planeswalker. And then the last of the destruction type spells is Heliads Intervention. It is a 2 and X. Choose one, target creature, destroy X artifacts or enchantments. Target player gains twice X life. Usually it's the first one. And you can get rid of 2 or 3 pesky artifacts, enchantments. Sometimes you can hit a creature because it's an enchantment creature. And overall it just deals with a lot of things. Then we have some things that work with 1/1 counters. Felidar Retreat has landfall. Create a 2/2 creature beast token, or put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control, and they gain vigilance until the end of turn. Hydra's Growth. I've always really liked this card and never really found a deck where it fits. But it fits here. When it enters, you put a 1/1 counter on enchanted creature, and at the beginning of your upkeep, double those 1/1 counters. So over time, if it's not dealt with, it steamrolls. Basariket is a 3 mana, 3 loyalty planeswalker. You put a 1/1 counter on something and it gains indestructible. -2, whenever one or more non-creature tokens attacks this turn, create that many 1/1s, so you go wide with creatures you have. And -6, at the beginning of your combat, on your turn, create a 1/1 soldier and put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. If you can land it and protect it and get to -6, the game is usually over. And then the Ozolith. It's a 1 mana legendary artifact, and whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters, put it on the Ozolith. And then at the beginning of combat on your turn, if the Ozolith has counters on it, you may move all counters from Ozolith onto target creature. So it plays well with anything that has any kind of counter on it, like the Mothra counters. If one of your creatures has a flying counter and leaves the battlefield, it goes onto the Ozolith, and then you can move that counter onto something else. So it just helps maintain those counters that you've gained throughout the game. Then we have a couple of land spells. We have the Sigiri Glacier or Sigiri Shelter. It enters as a tapped white source, or you can give target creature protection from the color of your choice for 2, 1 and a white. Then you have Balaged Recovery and Balaged Sanctuary. It enters as a green tapped land, or you can return target card from your graveyard to your hand. We have another Planeswalker with Vivian Monster's Advocate. You can look at the top card of your library at any time, and you may cast creature spells from the top of your library. Its +1 is create a 3/3 beast creature token. Put your choice of a vigilance counter, reach counter, or a trample counter on it. So if you get all 3, you have Ozolith in play. Those beasts leave, they go into the Ozolith. You can move those counters onto something else, and it works quite well. And its -2 is when you cast the next creature spell this turn, search your library for a creature card with lesser converted mana cost. So often you're probably finding Renata, or you're finding Shoot Swarm, or you're finding something that really does affect the board in a big way. And then you shuffle your library and put it on the battlefield. And last, we have 2 more spell lands with Turn Timber Symbiosis and Turn Timber Serpentine Wood. You can pay 3 life to have it come into play untapped, or you can pay 7 mana to look at the top 7 cards of your library. You can put a creature from among them onto the battlefield. If that card is converted mana cost 3 or less, it enters with 3 additional 1/1 counters on it, and then you put the rest on the bottom of your library. And the last spell in the deck is Emery's Call, or Emery's Shattered Skyclave. It's a white land that enters play untapped if you pay 3 life, or you can create 2 4/4 white angel warrior creature tokens with flying for 7 mana. Creatures you control gain indestructible until your next turn. Then we have some lands. Castle Ardenvale, pay 4 mana to create a 1/1 white human creature token. It enters play tapped unless you control a plains, which we have 4 plains. We have Castle Garenbrig, pay 4, add 6 red or 6 green mana. Spend this mana only to cast creature spells or activate abilities of creatures. And we have 5 of those plains to help it come into play untapped. We have the Branch Cliff Pathway and the Boulder Loft Pathway. It's either green or white, depending on what you need. Temple of Plenty enters the battlefield tapped. You get to scry 1 and it creates a green or a white. Command Tower makes a green or a white. Evolving Wilds, one of those lands we can replay with our Ancient Green Warden. You can search for a basic. Field of the Passage, same thing, search for a basic. This time it comes into play untapped if you control 4 lands. Evolving Wilds does not do that. Field of Ruin, another land you can use to fix if you need to fix yourself, but also destroy a pesky land on your opponent's side of the field. Maybe get rid of a dual color land to make it so that they have less of one color, or some form of utility land. And there you have it. That is my Yasharn Implacable Earth, the 4 mana 4/4 elemental boar. Alright, let's see if these 1/1 counters can make things happen. If you feel like watching the video for the battles, it's in the description below, or it'll be in the card somewhere on the screen. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting the like button, subscribe so that you can see more of my content, and hit the bell so you are notified when it comes up. Alright, thanks for watching. Have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night wherever you are in the world. Bye for now.